I wanted to talk about fear a little bit more today. There's a lot to say about fear. We probably could talk for months about fear. But here's what I want you to understand. I told you in the last video, our brains are not wired for fear. God didn't create us to have fear. And so when we have fear, our brain doesn't know what to do with that. It kind of short circuits our brain. And when we have fear, and especially when we dwell on fear, then we wire that toxicity into our brains and into our life. And that's actually really damaging. Here's the fact. Fear causes brain damage. It really does, because your brain wasn't made for it. The good news is you can heal that. You can reverse that, you can heal that, and that is all done with how you think. And so thinking becomes really important. You may have heard this before, but fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Now, a while back, I talked about how what's real is not always what's true, but what's true is what's always real. Here's the case of false evidence appearing real. What we might say is it's real evidence appearing real, but it's not true, right? It's not true. And so I think one of the big things we have to do when we begin to experience fear, and by the way, I think fear, when we ruminate on it, when we meditate on fear, when we allow that to just, in our mind, to run with that, I think that turns into anxiety. And so if you're dealing with fear, if you're dealing with anxiety, then this is something you really need to think about and begin to learn how to reverse that trend of always buying into fear. And fear is so dangerous. Fear kills creativity. Fear, you stop thinking right when you have fear. You become frozen. You probably don't move forward in the things that really you should be moving forward in. And man, I can't tell you how often fear keeps us from doing what God designed us to do. And it's fear especially causes us to not be who God created us to be. And that's a big deal. So we've got to learn how to deal with fear. So here's just a couple things that I would remind you of. Research actually shows that about 90% of what we worry about never comes to fruition. So do you realize how much fear, how much worry, how much anxiety is wasted on things that are never going to happen? In other words, we just let our mind run with all of these possible scenarios, and we assume the worst and about the situation. We assume the worst about other people. And man, we just get it all wrong when we spend 90% of our worry on things that are never going to happen. Man, what a waste of time, what a waste of life, and what a way to let your joy be stolen. Okay. Now, I'm not preaching at you. I'm talking as much to myself that I've really had to battle fear. I've really had to battle anxiety for about the last 10 to 12 years of my life. It's really been an issue. Before that, it seemed I felt like I never had an anxious thought, and I wasn't really fearful. I can't say I wasn't fearful of anything, but man, some things happened in my life and some switches got flipped, and I got into very toxic thinking, and really what I would say is I had brain damage. And so I've been learning how to heal that brain damage through the way I think. And man, this all ties into why the Bible tells us to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. That means every time there's a thought, I've got to stop and go, whoa, wait a minute, why am I thinking that? And then I think some questions we have to ask ourselves, is it true? Do I know the facts, or am I just dreaming things up here? The reality is, I think fear most of the time is because it really comes from memory. We get into a situation and we think, oh, I've seen this before, or, oh, I know how this person always acts. I know what they're going to say. I know what they're going to do. And so all of that's really based on memory. It's not based on facts. And remember, 90% of what you worry about isn't going to happen. So what we have to do is take that thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. And if we go to Romans 12:2, it says, don't conform any longer to the patterns of the world. And I would tell you that fear, worry, anxiety, all of those things are patterns of the world. Though none of that comes from God. None of it. He didn't create your brain to even be able to handle it. So that does not come from God. It comes from the world. And so it says, do not be conformed any longer to the patterns of the world, but be transformed, which means to be changed in form by the renewing of your mind. So we have to renew our mind, take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ. And then there's this mind renewal process that has to happen. And that means we have to exchange lies for truth. We have to exchange the lies for the truth. We have to exchange the false evidence that appears real for the truth, right? And when we do that, then we can begin to renew our mind. And it says when we renew our mind, then there's transformation. Things change in form. So we could even go as far as saying, I can change my brain in form physically with how I think. And that's done through this mind renewal process. I'm going to spend quite a few days talking about how we renew our mind. How do we take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ? How then do we renew our mind? So here's what I would encourage you to do when it comes to fear. First of all, recognize that God wired your body. He wired your brain, your body to recognize when there are negative warning signals. So the minute you get a negative emotion of some kind, that's fear, that's doubt, that's guilt, that's shame, you name it, any negative emotion. And sometimes we even feel that physically in your body. I know for me, a lot of times with fear, I feel it in the top of my gut and even in my chest a little bit. It tightens up, my traps up here tighten up, and I maybe even get a little bit short of breath. I have physical signs, and that's God's way of telling you something's wrong, right? Something's wrong, and that's okay. So learn how to let fear become your friend. Learn how to let negative emotions become your friend, because it's like a warning on your dash on your car. It just tells you something's wrong. Now, you've got to take the time to investigate what's wrong, right? Go dig for the truth. And in your own life, when you feel negative emotions, you feel it, you sense it, you think it, stop, take that thought captive, and then begin to ask yourself, is it true? Do I know the facts? Am I just making stuff up? What do I know? And then I'm going to talk to you in coming days about how do we then exchange the lies for the truth? How do we exchange the false for the true, right? So remember, fear is false evidence appearing real. So let's trade that false for the truth, right? So again, fear can be based in reality. It is our reality. There is something going on, but our conclusions are rarely right. Our conclusions about things are just rarely right. Our minds just go crazy on us, and we have to learn how to control that and how to stop that. And that's done through the power of God, but also understanding how He wired our minds and how He wired our brains and our bodies. And then all of that kind of works together. Science is just in the last decade beginning to uncover the truth of how God created us. So anyhow, I hope that's helpful. Is it true? Is it actually factual? 90% of what you're worrying about isn't going to happen. And so if you want to be freed up, if you want to begin to be able to be more creative in your thinking and find real solutions to problems, if you want to begin to reverse the brain damage that's been caused by fear, if you want to free yourself from anxiety and worry and fear and guilt and shame, there's a way to do that. And I can't wait to share with you a little bit more about that, how that works, why it's important, what we can do, what God desires for us. And this is all to get us back to understanding and being the person that God created us to be, so that we can do then what it is that He created us to do. And when we do that, we experience real joy in life. Wouldn't it be awesome to live fearlessly? There's a way to do that, and I want to talk to you more about that. I hope that's helpful. I hope that's a good encouragement for you and some challenge. And by the way, this even has a lot to do with teamwork. So if you're leading a team or a company or a business or a church or whatever it is, there is actually a process with this that we have to deal with within teams to get to the point where the team can function in unity and become a highly creative team doing things that no one's ever done before. So there's a lot to it.